Happy you're all here, and even though I can't see you, and I know you're there. So one thing we want to go over here today was the idea that there's the plot-driven design story, starting with the hero's journey. For a second here, I'll introduce myself. I'm Ehren Gaag. I'm a principal in the Baltimore office of Gensler. I'm a design director and have been with the firm now 24 years. So it's been a while. I went to the University of Cincinnati, graduated there with an architecture degree, and have done workplace design for most of my career. I know you guys are all students, and it's very exciting. I've got a 17-year-old that's actually looking at colleges right now. He's going to be a senior in high school, so I'm kind of feeling the collegiate thing back again here. It's very exciting. A little bit about Gensler, if you don't know, we are the biggest architecture firm in the world. It's a 100% employee-owned company, which is very important for your kind of long-term situation. Try to find a place that has that, because then you really kind of grow some savings and grow some of the company stock over time. A couple other things about us. We work in 48. We have 48 offices around the world, and we have 80 languages spoken throughout the company. So it's a very diverse company. We do our best in that case to maintain that, and now we're looking to expand that as well. So good changes coming there. One of the things we talk about our practice areas as part of how we actually do work at Gensler. It's one of the 4 axes of the firm between client relationships, practice areas, offices. But we really hit everything from the smallest thing in the company we've designed is a label for a wine bottle to all the way up to the second tallest tower in China right now with the Beijing Tower. Practice areas, airports, landlord repositioning, and government defense, digital experience design, product development. These are all things we really do here, and one new one is a residential in a more limited capacity. But it is about anything we can do here, and it's a fantastic company to work for. Getting into the meat of the presentation, really going to talk about storytelling today. I've got 4 different sections that I'm really kind of focusing in on, and I'm going to kind of go through them, and hopefully you'll see the thread that really follows. There's a lot of information here, and I think that it's really how you want to understand, how you want to kind of take this information and use it for yourself is really kind of the kind of fun part of this one, because it really can be done so many different ways. And I think that you're actually going to see 4 different examples of how we're talking about it. Just starting off with Joseph Campbell. In kind of late 40s, early 50s, Joseph Campbell was working at Sarah Lawrence as a professor of English and philosophy. And he was really influential in this idea of the monomyth. So the hero with 1,000 faces. It's a constant story that is a very consistent way of telling the story throughout time. Kind of well before the U.S. was even a country. This was a normal way of telling a story. So as we kind of move through, we're going to go into the idea that there's this kind of bridge between the known and the unknown. So you're starting at the 12 o'clock position at the top of the circle. You go around, and the beginning of the story always talks about how the person the story is focused on, the hero, what their life is like. And then they have to hit this kind of unknown bit and go into a different world so they can then come back out of it and be that better changed person. And you're going to recognize this kind of immediately with things like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, where she had this idyllic life in Kansas where everything was black and white, and then she goes into this color world that's very different. There's all these different creatures, different people, witches and whatever, and talking sort of robots. But again, goes in, comes back out again. Same kind of story shows up then and Back to the Future, where, you know, Marty McFly knows what his audience is, knows what his, you know, all the people around him, this crazy Doc Brown character, but then all of a sudden he finds himself in 1955 and meets his parents and has all kinds of uncomfortable situations, but has to figure his way back out again, Back to the Future. And then probably the most famous story of this one is Star Wars, the original movie. So this is Luke in the beginning of his story into the world of the Jedis. And we can go into this one a little bit more in a second, but really what it is this is how the stories break down. There's 8 parts of it. There's the objective, the goal, and the call to action. And then initially there's always kind of that refusal of the call, like, no, I can't do this. I can't be part of this. You know, this is my life. I can't just leave it behind. But then something happens that says, okay, maybe I can be. And then at number 3, this is a really important one, is the meet the mentor. You know, how does that person then say, no, it is going to be okay. You can do this. And then things go, you know, real bad, real fast, right? So you end up, you know, you cross the threshold. You can never go back again. You can never be in the life you had before. And then immediately you're in the what they call the belly of the whale, the worst possible condition where you think it couldn't get any worse, and then immediately gets even more terrible. And there's all kinds of different roads and trials and ordeals and the crisis of faith, consequences, the treasure, the revolution. Then really it's this kind of return back, the atonement, the flight home, and then the general restore to a supposed normalcy, which we're all looking for at this point. And then you're really the master of the 2 worlds, and you're free to live in a different manner. So that's generally what that story is all, or how the hero's journey really comes across. And so if we kind of go through this again and kind of understand, so the hero, this is this is the first time we see him. He's a young-faced boy, doesn't really know much about the outside world. Then he meets his mentor and realizes, you know, something's very different now. He actually has a different idea of what life could be like, and really wants to kind of go do something, but then says, I can't really leave. I can't leave, you know, Aunt Beryl and Uncle, I can't remember what his name is. But then again, something happens, and they're actually, you know, killed by the stormtroopers. And then he goes to the spaceport, and this is the moment. This is the threshold where he says he's going to leave the planet and nothing will ever be the same again. And then immediately they were more or less, you know, kind of stuck into this into the Death Star. And the Death Star is the belly of the whale. And they even go into the more depths of the belly of the whale in this garbage dump that shows up. And things get, you know, things are bad. And Luke is pulled down into the water by that serpent piece. And then things look like they're going to get better. Then the walls start crushing in. Then the mentor dies. So now what? Things got from bad to really, really bad now. And now he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to get out of this. But there's always a little bit of that of Obi-Wan in him, and he finds a way to channel that and then destroy the Death Star. Everybody loves that scene. And then return the hero to Princess Leia. And that begins his entirely new life. He can never be the same kind of person again. But now he's the master of the 2 worlds. He knows his old world. He knows his new world. So, you know, I think what you can see is that storyline isn't probably about every movie you've ever seen that has any kind of hero type in it. Anything from Mr. Miyagi and the Karate Kid to Avatar to Rocky to Hannibal Lecter to Shrek, everything. They all have about the same line and about the same way of going through a story. And it's very consistent. It's something, if you can really begin to understand how to channel that and push your project, your stories into this kind of an idea of how you actually do the progression of the of your project and of the relationship with your client, you can actually use this to your advantage to understand how to go through it. Now, I've got a couple of examples I want to go through. The first one is the Planet story. Now, Planet it's a local advertising PR firm, marketing firm that's down the street from me in Baltimore. And these guys came to me with this idea that they wanted to really kind of do something very different and very special. And we went through our normal kind of run through of you know, who are you? What do you want to do? What do you want to be? So we went through a big vision session, found all these great words and all these great ideas. And you know, as we typically do, but it's really then culling that down into a vision for the client that they can really bite off on. And you know, it comes down, so all those things are starting to kind of come together into smaller and smaller and smaller buckets until we get to the kind of the 6 real driving principles for the project that were these. So it's really about storytelling. It's about the destination workplace and design for disruption and showcasing their personality. All that, though, actually gets down into one more piece. So we actually have one more kind of guiding principle or vision for the project, and that was of the skate park. So all of those things, all of those ideas out there that Planet wanted to kind of get in and do and be and be part of, really gets down into the idea that there's a place that you can go to with like-minded people and learn new tricks from them, really understand how to kind of hone your craft and be part of a thing that has, you know, like different, in the side bowl, you can do different tricks than you do in the little bridge area that you do over on the other side. So it was a perfect analogy of what we really wanted to do. And that was great. And that really helped us set up how we wanted to set up how we're making design decisions throughout the project. And we'll go through what that is, but on top of that, what we want to do is layer in the hero's journey into the project itself. And that's really what this comes down to. So you really have this kind of, in the pink, it's the establishment of the hero. And the hero in this case is Planet Agency. So you come in and you start going kind of counterclockwise around this plan into the order, and that's where it's the known world, and that's where we put the account leaders and the management and things like that. You know, when you call in for a problem with your bill, you want to know that there's somebody there that is in a state of order. They know what's going on. They can help you and move forward. But then you go through this threshold that takes you into the chaos side, and the chaos side is, of course, the most fun part, right? It's that's the creative side of the agency. So then you go through that and you meet people and you get, you know, your world shaken a little bit, and then you have this return into the new order, which is a conference room where you can close the deal. So how that actually kind of pulls together in the space itself, and here we go. So you come in, and it's a very clean kind of thing. The reception desk is done with a kind of formed Corian piece that has this kind of reminiscent idea of the kind of the skate park kind of forms as it goes, you know, as you kind of be able to kind of bump up against it or use it in your tricks. Into the order, you know, slightly different order here. You know, some of the details that we put in for the skate park is that it's hard to see here, but the edge of that bar actually has kind of a Baltic birch plywood built up with laminate on either side, so it looks like the edge of a skateboard deck. The back wall that actually has then tile as the little stripes of different colors, those are actually different skateboards that have been cut up and then mounted as tile along the wall in kind of these dramatic kind of you know, lines that go through. Over on the order side, it actually has then this kind of, you know, kind of stadium type of presentation area or ideation area. You know, again, with the idea that there's kind of different elevations and rises and fun little places you can learn new tricks in the agency. And then looking into the order side, all the lights are lined up, the desks are relatively lined up. There's still a little bit of action. But the big neon tube in the background, that's the threshold. That's the point where you then launch yourself into the chaos side and the creative side of the business, which looks, and that's actually into the tunnel itself. And then looks into the chaos side. The chaos side, the light fixtures are all in different angles. All the workstation is different angles. You can see on the right-hand side that there's art and graphics and things like that all up against the wall. You know, there's lots of graphics on the back walls of the offices and conference rooms in the back of the space, and it's a fun, more chaotic kind of way to think about the workspace. That's different, but similar to what the order side was. Just a little close up of some of the areas along that zone, and then some of the slogans that they have as an agency, how to conduct yourself and things like that, or then kind of in the lettering up in the upper left hand side there is actually then repeated along the face of the offices in this photography actually, but it's there. So that's that was kind of the second phase of this presentation. Now we're really kind of getting into the idea that there's other things to kind of think about, and how do you, just as we said, the skate park was one of the ideas that we look at for how you can use a couple of words to really direct your team and have them understand how to understand all the decisions they have to make throughout the project. From the edge of that bar to how you would treat the walls inside of a restroom or something like that. How do you say in as few words as possible and give the biggest vision possible? So this is kind of a fun little thing that I heard about several years ago, and I think it's a really interesting way to think about how you tell your story. So, not knowing the ages of all of you, and I hope you've seen these movies, but regardless, I think it'll be interesting. This movie Alien, which was done in 1979, I think. I can't see my thing again. And it was a movie that was being pitched, and the people doing the pitch wanted to bring across the greatest amount of imagery and visualization in the fewest number of words possible. And they managed to do this very, very neatly. So what they were trying to do was say that I have this other idea that we wanted to kind of tail off of the movie Jaws, which was done a couple of years before then. And really what they wanted to say was, how do we make a different movie that's of a similar kind of an idea of being, this monster kind of thing, trying to get at everybody and trying to kill everybody, but they wanted this thing to be Jaws in space. And that was enough for the movie executive, who generally those guys don't have much time to really sit and listen to long speeches and ideas about what to do. It gave them the idea that it's a movie like Jaws, whichever, it's still at the top of everybody's mind, but then it added to the whole space thing, which then kind of, brought it into the idea of the other very popular movie of 1977 was Star Wars. So how do you get that idea of these things together? Now that if you haven't seen it, Jaws is, it's a movie where everything's a bit dingy, right? There's, the boat, the ORCA is a terrible boat. It's barely afloat. And, it's basically destroyed later on in the movie itself. It still has the hero's journey thing going on. The mentor gets eaten by the shark. But the ship in Alien is very much like that. It's dingy. It's a workboat. It's a blue collar kind of an operation where it's all a bit kind of broken. It's all a bit kind of dirty. It's not like a slick thing. And that's what when they started doing the sets for movie Alien, they really looked at Jaws and said, all right, everything can be a bit dingy and a bit dirty, and the coffee mug is just a regular coffee mug. It's not like a space mug. It's all those little decisions really helped go through the process of having the film crew, having the set creators and the costume designers understand what kind of decisions they needed to make. So it's a shot inside of the Nostromo where it's all dingy, is leaking and dirty, and the costumes are very utilitarian. They're like like what garbage collectors might wear or something like that. It's not not fancy shiny space suits kind of things. and you can start to see even the edges of the material on their costumes is starting to be, like, soiled and dirty and frayed. Not what you necessarily expect for a, oh, now we're going too fast. Thanks. Not what you expect for a space movie. So it's really that idea that in 3 words, these guys could actually fill out a lot of what the visualization of the movie Alien really was going to be. And that's something that, we've actually done that at my office, and I've done it a couple times for projects. We do projects for like 3-letter agencies. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically kind of secret agencies and things like that near Washington, D.C. A lot of times I don't know who the client is actually going to be. So we as a team will make up something. Like one time we made one that was like a Men in Black in color. And that gave us a lot of kind of visualization between, the designers, the interior designers, the architects, and all the people that work in the project to understand how to build the decision-making tree. And it really did help out. And I think it really unified the team and really allowed them to work together in a way that was a lot tighter and a lot closer than it would be if everybody just had sort of was kind of going off in their own little idea once in a while, and not knowing or not understanding how the group was really making a decision. So there's another series out there from Netflix called Abstract. And if you haven't seen this one, it's really worth it. I was really captivated by this one. It's about Ruth Carter. She's a costume designer, and she does that with kind of stage and screen. So she I think her real love that she mentions is Broadway, but she also does this for the movies. And I think one of the things that's really interesting about watching this show and really understanding how she works is really getting into the research. So what Ruth does is she really goes in and understands, the characters. She gets into the script. She goes into the ideas kind of the story itself and really dives into the story. So there's a lot of research that you can equate to what your clients are. So it's the idea that you have a program that it's all kind of written out, all the stuff that needs to go into the project. And then you have a list of then people that are going into that. And so you know who the CEO is, the HR manager, this. And really it's the idea that what if those people, you don't see them as just people doing business, but you think of them as the cast and the script, right? So how does your interior design, how does your planning, and how does your ideas of making that, or deciding on this chair versus that chair and this upholstery versus this light fixture really support your cast and your script? And I think that's a really interesting way to kind of think about this in the case of interior design. So what Ruth does is she really does get into the script. She then kind of launches into this kind of a long process of finding all kinds of different materials, all kinds of different ways to put things together. And then she does the research on the characters themselves. So this is work she's done for Black Panther, and she really went into the Jabari tribe and really understood, the ritual of scarification, the way that the costumes would actually go together, and the way they actually kind of would join leather to fabric to other natural materials, or the way they used color. And she did a ton of research on that. And that really came down to into the still of the movie Black Panther here, where it's taking that kind of ancient Jabari tribe, this warrior tribe, but then putting them into the future and understanding how would those costumes be made a little differently. How does the kind of ritual scarification show up in the armor plates around these warriors? And it became just a wonderful tableau that really made the viewer feel like they're part of the story. And that's something that I think that if you're successful in what we're talking about here, how do you make your clients and their guests feel like they're part of the story you're writing for that project? And I think that I gave you 4 examples of kind of how this really can work and how you can use this background of the hero's journey or a project story that doesn't necessarily even have to relate completely to what the client's doing, but it's something you can really grab onto, and something that you can then kind of communicate with your team, so everybody has kind of the same straight line idea of making decisions. Because really in this business, it's all about making the right decisions at the right time, and everybody's dealing with billable hours, and you want to be able to do the project in as few hours as possible, and then get the greatest project out of that process. So anyway, that's really kind of the end of my presentation.
Yes, Ehren, thank you so much for such an insightful presentation. That was incredible to hear. Ehren, can you tell us a little bit more about how many designers work on an average project, what that team structure looks like?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the size of the project. We have projects that are, let's call it a 25,000 square foot project is probably something that's a little bit more in the 2 to 3 person range. We'll have a senior designer, a junior designer, and then probably a project architect that actually then is helping put the technical end of the project together. And that's one that I think it's really very interesting to say, as the project grows in size, you might need additional people. One of the things we do at Gensler, though, is also then add in other expertise levels. There's people that do consulting with us, and they will have a role in the project. We'll have people that work on lead and be a more sustainable or more resilient type application, and they'll have a role in the project. The core team may be 2 or 3 people on a project that size, but it always has kind of other kind of planets around that of other, or moons anyway, of other professionals we support. Once a project grows to be probably more like 50,000 square feet or to 100, it probably adds another 2 people to the project. And the duration of that is probably then 2 or 3 months on the smaller side and 3 or 4 on the upper side. And then once it gets over 100,000 square feet, it sort of grows a little bit from that on. And right now, with the advent of this, COVID mentality or application, it's probably changing yet again.
Right. Piggybacking off of, speaking of COVID, how has your team adjusted to being more remote and having to communicate and collaborate in this remote environment we all find ourselves in?
Oh, that's a hard one. And really it's different for, like in Gensler in the Southeast region, which we're a part of in Baltimore, it goes from Philadelphia down to Miami. We have 8 offices in that region. Every office is dealing with it slightly differently. And the people inside of each office then also have a different story. We have people that have, my studio director has 3 kids under the age of 7. And getting her to be able to be available at exactly the time that you want to be available is very different, because she has to take care of kids as well, be a school teacher and all those other additional jobs she has. So it's I don't know if there's one answer to this, but there's I can probably go on for about a week on this one. No, being able to be facile with Zoom, GoToMeeting, Teams, and Skype, as well as WebEx is sort of an interesting one, because every program has a slightly different way of working and a slightly different way of sharing. Teams has been a great tool for us. It's been able to properly used anyway on some of our project. I think it's been a real help to get us to be together and on the same page, and very up to date. But beyond that, it's really just being diligent about calling people and making sure that they got your information and they understand what to do next. So in that case, when I was in the office, I'd just be able to stop by somebody's desk and just say, again, my 3-word thing, got it? Is it okay? Good. But now I've got to make sure I kind of follow up and do it again and do it again and do it again. So there's a lot more time invested in growing people in this case.
Right, understandable. What has been your path to design? How did you end up at Gensler?
Okay. Well, Cincinnati is a co-op school, as many of you know, and so I did co-op rotations in Cincinnati and Cleveland and Baltimore, and And that was kind of all during the recession of the early 90s. So it was a little bit tough. And then I moved out to Baltimore after graduation and got a job with one of the companies I co-opted with, which was fine. It got me out here. But a friend of mine had co-opted with Gensler when I was I can't remember where I was co-oping at that time. But anyway, he always had the best things to say about it, and he had what a wonderful time. So I heard that they were opening an office in Baltimore, and I applied for that one, came in, and actually at that point, all the hiring was done in DC. So they wanted me to go down to DC and work for 9 months or so to really get part of the culture before moving up to Baltimore. So 5 years after that, I started to actually then work out of the Baltimore office. So it was worth it. It was a great time, and you get to learn a lot within a big firm. But really, the interesting thing for me is to work out of a small office of a big firm. So I have wonderful resources of people really around the world, and 5,600 people, and now I can talk to I can really talk to anybody in the firm in kind of a 5-digit telephone exchange or in an IM, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to get a response from about any one of them. So it's a wonderful way to be able to kind of really share knowledge, share expertise. Know that somebody's done a similar project out of Abu Dhabi or out of London and say, hey, I've got this, and they're going to say, oh, here's something you have to look for. And it's really kind of a wonderful thing. That's how I got here. And then as Beth talked about, at one point or another, my friend and hers, Ken Baker, had a product design question for us. And he knew I was kind of a bit of a tinkerer and knows how to kind of put materials together. So he tagged me and my other friend Jordan to design a product, and that turned into a kind of a different direction of product development at Gensler. So we've designed 6 or 7 different projects in the first couple of years, and really kind of built a business that's kind of changed over the time. And now we have managers that take care of it, and I don't get to do as much as I used to, but I still get to do it once in a while.
That's great. We have a question. As a product design student, how could I be influenced or learn from architecture? How do physical spaces and products intertwine and both become better?
Interesting question. Okay, well, I think the meat of it is that you're still designing for people. People still have to use the product, and depending on let's just say it's a chair, that product has to relate to the person, has to relate to the situation that is being placed into, and everybody that comes in contact with it, it's an opportunity for that piece, that chair, that to really feel like it's part of the greater system and the greater architecture, interior design around it. That said, it's got its own human factors to deal with, but I don't know if I'm answering this very succinctly, but I think that there's the way you can learn from architecture is just watch people. A lot of what we will find out, and a lot of the research we do, is really just kind of an anthropomorphical understanding of what people are actually doing. How is work changing is kind of a large amount of what we kind of try to understand, because it's a big part of our business. So how technology and different devices and things like that, and the proliferation of how they're getting used changes how furniture is designed and utilized, and or even how it's even bought, and by what company it's being made from. If you've seen that, smaller companies like Poppin have really come up, kind of strong in the market, and have a very different method of selling to their customers, and they're becoming very successful at it. And so, right. Just a lot of watching the market, watching people, and being in spaces.
Definitely. When did you start linking film to the design process?
Honestly, it's probably when I first heard that Jaws alien story. And I think the magic of it was the fact that these were all shared experiences. We live in a world where, there's, hundreds of people around us at any given time. And I haven't any idea what Alyssa is really like. You know, I haven't really spent that much time with her, but Alyssa could have a very different idea of what life is. And her experiences are very, very different from mine. So how do I find a way to connect with her? If we can talk about a movie or a TV show or something that has a character to it, or it's, you know, like a particular idea of how things look, it's something we connect about, and it's something we can both say, oh, I get it, I understand what you're saying, and then we can move forward as a team.
Do you have any recommendations for how to tell your story in portfolios? Is it more important to tell the story of projects, or to tell the story of your educational journey using projects to illustrate this?
I don't know if I understand the difference, but at the same time, what you know, as far as a portfolio goes, and I review plenty of portfolios, what I look for is the idea that people can understand what to do with a problem. So if the problem or the opportunity is clearly laid out, and the methodology of saying, this is how I attacked it, these are the things I focused on, and then this is the design I came up with based on these factors, that's really what we look for. And I don't know that there's a huge difference in what the question really was, but really what I'm looking for, though, is the idea that there's thought and there's meaningful idea or decisions made in order to come to a final design. And it's not easy to do. A couple things on portfolios, if we can be like this for a minute. I see a lot of portfolios, and every page is filled with hundreds of images. Don't do that. Way too much stuff. Cull the information down. Be very specific about what you put on a page so it really can speak very loudly on its own. 1 or 2 pictures is way better than 10 or 20. Make them bigger. A lot of guys have to wear these kind of things now. Text bigger. That's some of the best information or advice I can give you on portfolios.
That's great advice. What were your most impactful experiences or insights as a young designer that have contributed to your success?
Wow, so many things. I think it's really exposing yourself to all kinds of different experiences. I like to travel. I think that's a wonderful thing. And really, when I go to a new city or something like that, it's really that process of just wandering around and looking up things, not just doing the kind of prescribed tour. You know, I think my family's finally on to me now because I took them to London a couple of years ago, and we did one day we did 31,000 steps. So I think that they're ready to you know, not travel with me anymore. But at the same time, that's how you really experience things. That's how you really kind of dig into stuff, and it's kind of go into the little shops, go into little cafes, and really understand how things are kind of put together in that place. I take a lot of pictures. I do a lot of I don't know, just looking around magazines, and you find a couple of seams in Instagram or something like that, and just constantly kind of have stuff kind of wash over you. And every now and then something really sticks. Something really kind of grabs a hold and will lead you to a decision that you didn't know you needed. So it's just keeping an open mind.
Right. How important is conceptual thinking while working on a project?
Critical. Conceptual thinking is really the idea that if I've got I've got a project now with 3 buildings I've got to understand how to deal with. And the initial critical thinking on that one was saying that, this building's really great for this. This one doesn't do this part really well, but if we change it in this method, it can be. We presented just a very conceptual idea of what that is. It was very different from what the client was expecting us to show. But in the end, it was like, yes, that's actually what we have to do. So it's really, being open to other people's opinions and ideas, but at the same time, really don't just go with the first gut, but really kind of take things apart a little bit.
Right. What's the most challenging part of the design process?
People. And again, I'm not saying that to be nasty or mean, but every project that I deal with, 5 or 6 different people on, there's 5 or 6 different opinions, and every one of them is useful and valid and needs attention. So it really is about the idea that you really listen. You really have to think about what other people are saying and react to that. The better you are at that, the more successful you're going to be.
Absolutely. Can you tell us a little bit more about the collaboration with clients? Do clients usually come with their own ideas and know exactly what they want and need, or it's more of a process of your design team bringing ideas to them?
No, actually, and you saw in the planet example that we always do a vision session early in the project. We'll do a little questionnaire kind of session, little what we call a WPI, a Workplace Performance Index kind of pre-survey, and that brings out a lot of information. From that, we then set up this vision session that gets into some of the issues that the client is having around business, around communication, around whatever we think the most pressing matters are. And with that, it's really engaged with the client. They're basically building their change management story with us while we're designing the very early part of the project. So their buy-in is critical. Part of that is the idea that to be smart about it, you have a limited fee to do the project. As quickly as you can come to a resolution on the direction, the better it will be for you long term to actually produce the project itself. So the quicker and more with the most support from the client coming to that initial concept design and getting that approved is beneficial for everybody. The client believes in what you're doing, and you're going to have the most amount of time and fee left over than to do the best amount of detailing and speccing furniture and all the other things that go along with the millions of design decisions made in your project.
How do you ascribe materials to a particular element of storytelling?
Depends on the story. Like the Ruth Carter example. She really went into the idea of the costumes based on kind of a futuristic version of what the Jabari tribe was looking at. The example gave for Planet was to take the idea of a skate park and skateboards and understand what are the little bits and pieces that make that interesting, that give you that visual clue that's going to help you in working on that project. Like the edges of the very simple idea really, the edges of the kitchen bar being like the side of the skateboard deck. So it's that kind of an idea. Is very simple, but can go a long way. And oh boy, what's the other one here? I had another one on the top of my head, but I can't remember what it is now. Anyway, there's more. It's really how you try to apply it.
Right, definitely. How do you elicit the unseen stories? Those ideas which apply to the whole, but may not be visible or understood at first glance.
That's the fun part. I think it's really just getting down with the team and understanding how all the information you just heard from the client can be woven into some sort of a background story, and it's going to be different for every client and every need, but there's the ability for that story or a story to be really kind of part of about any project. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a big, long, serious one. It could be something fairly simple. But the more you talk about it with your team, the more you communicate what that idea is, you'll be able to then be able to describe materials to it, to be able to direct the team in a certain direction and get the best result from them in the first, the first set of renderings or the first set of material boards put out.
What is Gensler's approach to sustainable design?
Well, we were part of LEAD when it first started, and we've been leading the kind of charge in that one for quite a long time. We've signed the Paris 2030 pledge, and Diane, our one of our co-CEOs, Diane Hoskins, has pledged that we were going, by 2030 we are going to be a carbon neutral firm. I mean, we've got not just one or two, but sets of people that really focus on sustainability and resiliency. Reeves Taylor out of our Houston office is a world leader and was actually in Paris during the signing of the 2030 pledge. And the only architect that was actually at the signing of this. So it's an incredibly serious thing for us. And it's one, and sustainability is kind of part of the makeup of the firm. There's a large part of our projects and our spec sections and our materials palettes that are kind of preset to be the most sustainable practices out there, and honestly, we just move up from there. So there's a baseline of a Gensler project that will be at least probably at LEED Silver from the start.
That's great, thank you. In your experience, what has been the best example of a project that exudes narrative?
That's a hard question. There's a lot of those. I think the one that I was probably most involved with was I did a project for Pandora. This is the jewelry company, not the cool internet radio company. But we did their headquarters in Baltimore, and we came up with this kind of narrative of the jewelry box and all the things that kind of came around it, and then actually used elements of their jewelry actually in the design itself. So it really is kind of woven throughout the interiors. That was a really fun project because they really got to kind of expand their footprint and their workplace in kind of tremendous ways. They were all jammed into this one little kind of flex tech building, not even close to downtown, into 5 floors of a building. And during the process, we actually built a full kitchen on the 15th floor with a barista and a full training center as well. So
Great.
that was fun.
It sounds like a beautiful project. What are some interesting books related to design that you would recommend?
It's a little bit dated in some of his examples, but the Design of Everyday Things is one that I actually bought on Audible, and I listen to it every now and then, just to remind myself. I think that's one of my favorite ones because it really kind of it reframes your thinking to an extent, and it allows you to kind of look at what you're working on and say, is this the most practical way to do this? Is this the way that people will really respond and be able to use this space appropriately? And it's surprising how many times you stop at a project and you think about that book and you actually reverse your decision on several things. That, and gosh, I think I look at just a lot of books with a lot of big pictures in them. It's less about the reading at that point, but I don't know. I'm a visual kind of person.
Those are my favorite too. How does the firm approach showcasing visually a project pitch? Do you use renderings, drawings, VR? What mode or software is typically used?
Let's see. It all depends on the client to some extent. Most of the time, when you're talking about something like that for a pitch, it's a competition that hopefully is a paid competition, because that means you can actually put billable time to it and really do good solid thinking and do renderings that make a lot of good sense. most of the time we try not to do design work ahead of time, mostly because I don't know anything about the client yet. You know, the best projects we do don't really have, you know, a statement going into it saying, this is what I think your project is. You know, like the vision session I showed for Planet. There's no way I could have designed the project as I did just on a whim, just thinking, oh, I wonder if they'd like this. Because it doesn't mean anything at that point. There's no rationalization of this is why they would want it this way. Because I don't know why they'd want it anyway yet. So I think most of the time it's really, you know, try not to design something ahead of time. But if you have to, you know, just put yourself in the shoes of the people that are going to be working there. Try to build a story, even if you have to make up that story about what they're doing there and why they're doing it and what's their motivation.
Makes sense. Where do you draw inspiration from, and how do you get yourself out of a creative rut?
They're going to answer what I answered before, is people. You know, I've got a huge resource of talent in my company and around my friends and around other things. It's always best to talk about it. If I've got a, you know, particular creative rut going on, if I can describe and do a little you know, sketch over the top of what I'm doing and say, this is my problem, I can't get out of this. If I take that to a couple of people, I'm going to get, you know, a couple of different answers. And between all the things that those people say and what I know, I can probably find a way out of it. It's not easy working alone.
Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we're out of time. Ehren, I want to say a huge thank you. I do have one last question before we wrap up for today.
Mm-hmm.
Any final words of wisdom or advice for the students tuning in?
Oh, whatever I could say a year ago is very different probably now. But don't give up hope. There's going to be jobs out there. There's going to be work. And, you know, I think that the opportunity to have especially the workplace world change considerably in the next couple of years is really profound right now. And nobody knows what it's really going to be like, but we're in the spot now where we can try to figure out what it is. So.
Great advice. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate you taking the time to come on and give such an incredible presentation. Students, thank you so much for joining today. If you want to learn more about Gensler, you can visit gensler.com or their Instagram, Gensler_design. If you want to learn more about The Original Americas, you can visit theoriginalamerica's.com or our Instagram @theoriginalusa. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.